we'll have this discussion.
Discussion? What discussion?
This is a discussion combustion.
Coming to you from Denver, Colorado.
This is Discussion Combustion Podcast with your hosts, Kevin Batstone and Arthur Raw.
Let's go from trannies to Harleys.
And we're talking Bud Heavies right now. I mean, look, it's a creamier beer than the light, you know, but I think it's good.
So that's what I started drinking when I was 16, 17. Like Budweiser was where I began.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you like those heavies.
I used to like them, you know, and then I went to the lights, you know, when I was about 30, I think.
Yeah.
Kind of switched it up a little bit, saved some calories, saved some carbs. But then I just drink more Bud Light, so it's like evens out anyway.
Right.
And we did the math one time, and it was like, it like, you would actually drink less calories and get more drunk drinking the heavies.
Right.
Opposed to the amount of alcohol that you would eventually get from drinking the lights.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I like to warm up with 2 craft beers. You know?
Okay.
I do.
It kind of gets the motor running.
Yeah, you get the 2 craft beers, you get a buzz to build from, and then you sit back and sip, you know, Busch Light.
Yeah. That's not a bad way to do it. I mean, it's like folks that'll do like a shot to start the night and then finish
Right.
it off with a light beer or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, whatever
Yeah.
your preference is. But
Yeah.
but
Dude,
you're not,
I'm shocked at the amount of liquor I can't drink anymore at all.
Like
I
whiskey?
can drink margaritas, and that's about it.
so tequila is your only spirit.
Is
Pretty
it dark
much.
or the light?
I can do just that nice light tequila,
Mm-hmm.
the
Blanco.
Mezcal mixed drink, you know, like a ranch water, a margarita, you know, something like that. Man, I can't do brown liquor even in a mixed drink. at
Really?
all. I've just
No high-end
like, hit a
whiskeys?
wall. Mm-mm.
Oh man.
No.
So you don't want to try this around the world whiskey
I saw
that we
it down there. It looked sharp. I mean, we got a great whiskey shelf at home, and it
Yeah.
just sits there.
Oh shit! I would love to come try.
I think I remember when we were up there last time,
That'd
you
be
had
so
like you had
fun.
like a 12 or 15 year aged scotch on there.
I have Johnny Blue sitting on the shelf.
Yeah, yeah.
Ready to go.
Yeah. See, that's more of like because you were having an amazing birthday party.
Yeah, it was
with a good show out that night. I
Yeah.
mean that day, and it was so much fun. So it's like you can't break out all the whiskeys on a day like that.
Yeah,
No.
No, that's where things start going off the rails.
Yeah, you can do a nice mixed drink, a little rum cocktail or something. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
margarita.
Yeah.
Mezcal's tasty. We have a bottle of Mezcal at home, but I just haven't even nutted up to throwing some ice in a glass and sipping on that straight.
What kind of
yet.
mezcal
Don't
is
you
it?
just want to take it straight
You would think
or
so.
neat? Is
I
that
mean,
what they
you
call
would,
it? Neat.
Neat.
Yeah, you would
Yeah.
probably want to. I just don't think I can do it anymore.
No.
I don't know why. I just hit the wall with.
You want it to be mixed.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you mixing it? I mean,
Mezcal, you can do like a margarita out of it.
Yeah, you can do
right?
sweet sour mix with it,
Yeah.
little lime juice.
If you have a good bartender can crush a mezcal drink, like really well. And if your bartender's average, they're like, we just don't work with it.
They don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Because it's a unique tequila. It's a smoky. It's got a little
Right.
smokiness
It's got
to
the
it.
smokiness, which I think is really pleasant.
Yeah, it's not bad if
Yeah.
it's done right. Because I've had some that are not great, and I've had some that have a great palate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I don't know, just a bite to liquor, I guess maybe, but I just can't do it anymore.
I mean, look, I'm kind of going through the same thing right now. I know. I think you're just a little bit older than me, not too much.
I'll be 41 in like 2 weeks.
Oh, I mean, you look so youthful.
Well, yeah, we were at
so
his 40th. Last time I saw you was at
Yeah.
your 40th.
Yeah. God, I'm such
Yeah.
a moron sometimes,
Yeah.
but it's okay.
I was just talking about gray hair today. I was like, man,
Dude,
I got to be getting there. I
You
can't
barely,
wait.
you barely
You
have
want
any.
you want them?
Yeah, dude, I want to look my fucking age. Dude.
Yeah.
I want to look
I look
fucking
older than
41.
you do with the amount of gray
Yeah, you got the gray, right?
that I
Like,
got.
I want it.
But it's
Yeah.
looking good, man.
Yeah, thanks, bro.
You're looking good.
Yeah. Feeling good.
It was so much. That was a fun birthday party, man. That
It
really
was
was.
fun. It was a lot of people coming together, just being good people.
Yeah, everyone got
Which-
along, which
yeah.
was great, and there was a
Yeah.
lot of different personalities there.
I
which
can
sometimes
guarantee you there's a lot of different personalities.
Yeah, there was.
Kevin was like, can I show up open carrying? And I was like, sure, because we don't care. There
Yeah.
were several people there that cared, and guess what? They got along with it. Because they were respectful. That was Claire and I's property, and they were like, okay,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, well, and that's it's your house, so it's like
Right.
your rules. If it was like, no, we
That's
probably
it.
don't want you to do that,
Yeah.
then I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it was great. I
Yeah, it
remember
was
you were
fun.
like, pretty soon Kev's gonna be out there shooting the rooster and taking him out. You're like, get rid of that fucking thing.
Because we had two at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
What happened to one of them?
Yeah, so we gave one away to Uncle Bobby. We don't know what he did with it, but it no longer exists, and we were like,
It's
fine.
gone.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I mean, our roost, like if you're eating chicken or poultry, do you only eat the females or do you like eat the males and the female? Like, how does that all work? Do you?
I think you just eat the females. We just have egg hens, but the meat birds, I don't know. I'd have to check.
Interesting.
We haven't
I've
gotten
never
into meat
pondered
birds
that.
yet.
I've never pondered
Yeah.
upon that before.
I haven't either. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think you eat rooster though.
I would say don't think so.
I mean, you probably could.
Yeah.
In a survival situation, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Who knows? Maybe in the next couple of years we'll find out.
You be eating a rooster?
You
Food shortage?
You just oh great. No, you just want that birthing meat. You know, the good old. You know, it has all the nutrients enough to
Right.
birth.
Yeah. Yeah. The birthing meat.
Yeah.
A little extra fat around there, and, you know.
It's good to go.
Because when egg hens get old enough, they stop laying eggs, and you can turn them into meat birds. You don't get a whole lot of meat, and the flavor is a little bit different.
You would
Yeah.
eat them while they're still capable of laying eggs.
No, just after they're done.
Just
you can,
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
get them moving. We're bringing in rabbits this year and doing them for meat. So we're going to start to go through the process of butchering.
Okay. So you're
Yeah.
going to bring rabbits in like to free range in a caged area, or are you going to have them in like a rabbit?
Yeah, we're going to have a rabbit hutch built. I thought we were bringing in 4. I got corrected the other day. We're bringing in 3. But maybe we'll just get 4 now because I said it.
Okay.
But we're going to have one stud and 3 does. I think is how the language for that,
One
right?
stud, 3 does.
Yeah, and then start pumping out baby rabbits, and we can name the breeding stock, but we just don't name the babies because their name is food. So yeah, we're gonna butcher them, feed them to us, feed them to the dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever eaten rabbit before.
I've had rabbit.
It's nice.
Is it kind of like duck? Like it's like a little more, like like oily. I feel like duck is like a little more oily.
I would
like,
think so. It's been a while since I've had rabbit.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
wild, more
Yeah.
wild.
I've had rabbit legs. They're it's definitely I guess it's kind of comparable to duck. I mean, you got to kind of work to get some of the meat off the bone, but it's got a
and
good
there's
flavor.
not a ton of meat on the bone, but it's just kind of a part of our goal, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, we want to be doing more animal husbandry. So Claire's starting with what we can have on our property, and then also we could have pigs and goats on our property. It's just, do we want them more? Do the mountain lions want them more? So the chickens and the rabbits we can build and protect. Where we start slapping up, because if you're in Ohio, you can just slap up an outbuilding and have goats just rolling in and out of it. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
You do that out here, and those things are going to get smoked in like a week.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Would you do goats?
Yeah, we would. Again, like 3 to 5 year plan. If this new small business is making enough money, we pull Claire out of work, and then she's like, "I'll milk a goat if I don't have to go to work."
Yeah.
But I don't have to milk a goat and go to work.
That's fair.
So if we can transition her out of work, she'll transition into more animal husbandry.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Claire's awesome.
Yeah, Claire's great.
Yeah, she is. She's really fallen into this role of like mini farm, hobby farm, homesteader. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good place
she's
to be, man.
excelling out there.
Yeah. Good place to be. I mean, you guys are preparing for potential chaos, and it's
the continued acceleration of the chaos.
yes,
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The continued. I like that.
Because something's always going to go
Following the trajectory
go off
of
the rails.
chaos.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think, if you look at cycle wise, I mean, I could rattle off 3 cycles quick that we're kind of in the end of those cycles, 1 in the beginning. So, for us, we're like, all right, harness the chaos, organize ourselves to go through the chaos, and then we're organized and let the chaos exist around you.
Sure.
Right? Because there's opportunities in it, or you can get caught up in the whirlwind and just get clustered by it.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is I hope I'm able to kind of say this in a way that makes sense, but chaos theory is really interesting because it's part of everything. And so as a human, consciously, we decipher life in a linear fashion. A led to B, led to C. But within chaos theory, A, B, and C are all the same thing. So, and there's no particular order. So it's like anything could potentially happen out of all nonlinear possibilities. And that is what is always happening, but because of our level of intelligence, like we decipher it ABC, right? So it's like living within peace, within the chaos, is actually like this higher level of consciousness where you're like really you're tapping into things there that it's like this is because chaos has always existed. Just like looking at a fire or something. Like it's like the fire is timeless.
Yeah.
So if you can find peace within chaos, within the mayhem.
So touch on that for a sec, right? Because chaos has always existed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just look at it, one of the two of the 3 cycles two of the 4 cycles I'm focused on right now is one, weather patterns, right? So if you just quick Google search Younger Dryas, right? That was a weather cycle that tipped weather patterns down drastically for 10 years and wreaked heck all over the farming industry and ag and people's ability to survive, right? The guy I follow, who quotes a lot of different solid studies and et cetera, he's watching the sun cycle. We're moving into a new 400-year sun cycle, and we're going to continue to see crazy weather, right? Putting downward pressure on people's ability to grow, cultivate food.
Sure.
So we're like, all right, take that chaos, and we're going to turn our property into a massive homestead and be as closed loop as possible. And in doing so, we've gotten a couple of other neighbors to be like, wow, you can do that up here?
Yeah.
You know, on the side of a mountain? Yeah. There's more people around us doing it. Second cycle that I'm following really closely is called the turning, the 4th turning. 1600s, 80 years after that was 1776. 80 years after that was the Civil War. 80 years after that was World War II. World War II was in the 1940s. What's 1940 plus 80? It's 2020, 2021, 2022.
Yeah, we're there.
Right. So we're in what a lot of people call the 4th turning. So there's going to be built in.
I've never even heard that.
Yeah.
This 4th turning.
4th turning. Put it into a search bar.
I've never even heard any of that. Have you, Kev?
I haven't heard of the 4th turning. No.
4th turning is great.
Till
So
now.
baked in
Yeah.
innate chaos. And if you can just accept that and go, okay, things are cyclical and there's always been chaos, right? Similar to your point. But chaos doesn't have to be scary or panicky. It just has to be something that you have to navigate.
Right.
Right? But just knowing that you have to navigate something is a start. Right?
Yeah, being prepared.
Well, I was
Yeah.
going to say preparation is the key to battle, right?
Yeah,
in
right.
any scenario. So, and I remember when we were up there last year, you were kind of showing us some of like the rainwater and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, you're in an undisclosed location. You know, we're not going to talk about that.
Undisclosed,
but
yeah.
on our other show,
Yeah.
Happy Friday, we were doing a bit about collecting rainwater.
Nice.
And kind of what Colorado looks at that as.
Yep.
And is it considered legal? Is it illegal? And, you know.
It's legal.
What'd you find? From my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, 110 gallons per person. Anything over that is considered the collective state property, right?
So it was like
close?
two barrels per house.
Yeah.
Per household.
55-gallon drums.
And
So,
those things
Yeah.
the water should only be used for exterior purposes,
Right.
like not shower
So
water.
like irrigation.
Or
Right.
you could use it for irrigation, but not, like nothing inside, not sink.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
I don't know how
But-
all that, like how would you even do that and regulate that?
And
But-
just like I said, Happy Friday, how do you enforce it, though?
yeah, how do you regulate
Yeah,
that?
Who's
Like,
going around saying you're using it indoors, you're not, you know?
And hopefully no one ever does, because that'd be a huge overreach, right?
Absolutely.
What I think a lot of those conversations and articles omit is the water that after I'm done collecting my 110 gallons of water and I've capped it and I don't collect anymore, you know, it rolls off my property into our community stream and goes down into the state of Colorado's rivers, and those rivers flow west, and then the state sells it to California. Do we get any of that money? But it's the state's water that we can't over-collect. So you belong to the state, I'm part of the state, so it's our water, but we don't profit off that. The state does.
Yeah.
And that's usually
also
omitted.
some of the stuff like
right?
the stuff like they were selling all this water to Saudi Arabia and all this other shit, and like, yeah, the water, the hunt for water to drink and water scarcity. I mean, look, I feel like everything that's online nowadays, it feels like it's all satire to me.
Yeah.
But it also feels like a lot of fear mongering. And sure, some of these things might be true, but
Right.
with the amount of disinformation that is within media, it's hard for me to even like believe maybe the things that are true. I'm just like I'm not gonna sit here and be like fearful.
Right.
Like if the shit goes down, sure, I might not be as prepared as some others, but like I was living it up until that happened. Like I was just enjoying life. Like I'm not sitting here like stressed out.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But it's good to be prepared still. Like
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we're moving into a time. So I just listened to a guy named Daniel Estulin. I've been practicing that name so it could roll off the tongue well.
Estula.
Estulin. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly how he said it. And the podcast host couldn't repeat it either, so I'm not doing it too good. But nice job. He's been studying this stuff for decades, right? And he's saying we're coming to the end of the Bretton Woods economic cycle, and there's really nothing that you can do to stop that. There's no language for the new cycle that starts, especially from an economic standpoint. So the in-between zone is going to have a lot of waves and chaos because there's going to be language being figured out. To his point is we can all roll over and accept it. That's going to be really bad, really chaotic, etc. Or we can all start to write our own language and push it into that transitional mode, right? So when you see the increase of homesteaders or increase of small business or increase of entrepreneurship, like people should rally around that because we're writing the language and the operating software for the next phase that we're entering into. We're exiting one, we're entering into another.
Sorry, what was it called again? This was the fourth.
So here's what's interesting is Daniel Estulin is saying we're at the end of the economic Bretton Woods cycle. The fourth turning is saying we're at the end of the cycle that started in World War II and ended, and now we're in the new one.
Okay.
The weather cycle is saying that we're at the end of a 400-year sun cycle entering into a new one. The astrological cycle is saying that the 6,480-year cycle of Pisces has ended, and we just entered the 6,480-year Aquarius cycle. And traditionally, it takes about 100 to 150 years to stop one cycle and enter into the next. So we're in a multitude of cycles. And here's what's interesting about Pisces. The cycle of Pisces represents people with blinders on going, no, my box, my comfort zone. And we're all shaken up, and now the term is awake. Are you awake yet, right?
Right.
Great Awakening. Aquarius represents an age of enlightenment where people stop getting duped and stop buying into false realities and start to live in the real reality.
So it went from Pisces to Aquarius?
It's the age, so it's not quite just like the linear zodiac. Okay. It's the age of Pisces.
Not following the calendar year, so to speak.
Yeah, to the age of Aquarius.
No, I don't know about any of this stuff.
Yeah. So
well, that's why we got Mike here.
We're in
I'm going to ask some questions.
A multitude of cycles.
That's crazy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of changes, a lot of shifts, a lot of energy shifts.
Right.
I mean, especially going from a Pisces to an Aquarius cycle.
Yeah, and even just mentally, people, because what you're seeing, like if you watch the Rogan RFK Jr. podcast,
I haven't caught up on that yet.
Dropping truth bombs all over the place.
That's what I heard.
I'm not on social media, but I'm monitoring like some news feeds, and a lot of people are going, dude, I never knew that. Like you're seeing that more and more and more now. This information has been around for decades.
Right.
Decades. And certain people have said stuff, and there's words to use to describe those people, and they were told they're full of shit, and now they're not. But you're seeing significant amounts of people going, whoa, I didn't know that, and now I get it.
Right.
Did you notice that?
I have, and I think another thing I've noticed too, though, we saw this a lot with COVID, and everyone taking things at face value, right?
Yes,
when it came to this is fact, this is not.
Yeah.
This is misinformation, this is not.
Yeah.
This is not a peer-reviewed article.
Right.
And that term peer-reviewed, I've challenged many times, including when the CDC finally came out and said, now the vaccinated and unvaccinated are recognized as the same.
Yeah.
That term peer-reviewed could mean a lot of things, Mike. Right?
Right.
It doesn't really hold water, I don't feel like.
Yeah.
It's a selling point, it's a talking point to try to drive home, well, this is correct, and this podcast over here with Dr. Robert Malone or Dr. Peter McCullough is not.
Yeah.
And that was dividing people. And I think people are starting to say, okay, wait a minute, something's not right here.
Yeah. Yeah, that ability to just slough things off at face value, I've kind of monitored growing up, and I've always found it kind of interesting. I remember I wrote a paper in 8th grade about Carnivore, and Carnivore was the FBI's original program to chew through landline data and then collect that data at the NSA, which was really big back then because it's difficult to collect information from the landline. So I wrote a paper contesting it in like 8th grade. And what you heard back then in the 90s and 2000s was, oh, well, it's probably not that bad, and if you're not doing anything wrong, and let's just not make a big stink about it.
Yeah, I remember
those
that.
people are finally now like, oh, is that why you were worried about that 5, 10, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago? And people who've had this knowledge and have been trying to speak out about it are going, yeah, this is where it leads to. And as we just mentioned, multiple cycles, and there's several more currently going on.
What is the big picture, like, as far as like the consensus in the community of people who know about this information, like what are the predictions of what's actually to come next?
Yeah.
Like what does all this lead to? Because this is all, like, what, 5 different things that all lead to something?
Yeah, right. So, it just depends how you look at it. If the weather guy will quote China, and every 400 years China has an empire dynasty collapse. Well, if the sun changes cycles every 400 years and you can no longer farm, especially without the advantages of big ag and technology, right? Your food production drops, people riot and get super pissed when they're hungry, and dynasties flip. So he lines up weather patterns to the rise and fall of empires. So, I think we're going to see some shifts in government as well.
So food shortages is like one of these things, and then that's going to lead to governments also having to make policy change.
Yeah, and exactly. Yeah, and listen to the narratives that you're being preempted with, climate change, climate change, climate change. Well, is that capital C climate, capital C change in the formal, like you own the word climate change? Or is that climate change like, hey, the sun's pulsing and there's nothing we can do about it, we should all adjust? Which narrative is that? Which political directive is that? Because if it's the natural one, we can all go, okay, cool, how do we farm better, and how can we adjust subsidies and rules and regs and get through this? If it's in the formal, it's you caused this climate change, so you have to give things up, and you can't have a gas stove, and you can't function, and you can't eat meat, and you can't fart. I can, because I'm the elitist who brought you this information, so I get you don't have, right? And you saw that during COVID, right? Because you saw the Denver Mayor Hancock, you saw Gavin Newsom, you saw Gretchen Whitmore. They all took trips and went on vacation unmasked and did whatever the heck they wanted to. We didn't get to. Same thing with like climate change, right?
Well, look at Greta Thunberg, right?
Right.
One of the biggest climate change advocates, young gal. I think she has Asperger's or whatever.
Yeah.
Brilliant mind. That's all well and good, but it's like, here she is getting pissed off on a global stage saying, shame on you. How dare you? This, that, and the other. And then she's flying around on all these jets. It's like, if you really want to lead by example and you really want to say, hey, you guys shouldn't be using this carbon deposit.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you should lead by example.
Yeah. And it also hints at the fact of, there's a lot of information out there, but what's good information and what's not. And I think, again, part of the awakening, we're seeing people go, oh, so there is a difference between peer-reviewed and peer-reviewed. There was a group that got together, and I don't remember the name of their organization, but they all agreed to peer-review each other, and they pushed through some junk that was known to be, it was almost essentially the Babylon Bee getting in peer review and getting passed through, and they would hand this stuff in, and it was hitting scientific journals.
Yeah.
And it was garbage. It was satire.
Well, here's the thing, because we're talking about a power kick right here, like, TNT on the table.
Yeah.
And we're always running into this stuff on the podcast, and that's like one of my favorite things about it. But here's the thing is, it doesn't matter the amount, like, people coming out here, like, and all these activists saying, like, we have to stop. And, like, sure, as communities, we might be able to get better at recycling. And there's even conspiracies that's a big hoax within itself. It's like, all we can do, it's some things are irreversible. And sometimes once certain motions get put into place, like, and everything has its time, like, nothing is infinite.
Right.
Maybe the universe, like, you know what I'm
is that, right?
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's the only thing I could ever consider is maybe being. So eventually this planet is going to go down the mudslide.
Right. And it has in the past too. Right?
And unfortunately right now, the human population is just far, like, before the agricultural boom and the, like, growth hormones that they put into agriculture, like, it wasn't even possible to be able to sustain and feed a world population that we have right now. Like, it wasn't even possible. So what we've already accomplished as far as humanity and the human population on this planet is far beyond what it was naturally accomplishable, right? So if you're, like, adding that into the equation and you're thinking about all that and, like, how far we've come and where technology is and how every nation has their right and humanity isn't like a globally collective in the betterment of humankind, like, we don't see eye to eye on everything as just humans on this one planet. Like,
which is good
it's so
because
much.
the only time
There's so
people
many
see
things
eye
that-
to eye is when it's forced, and when it's forced, it's one of the isms, right?
Yep.
There's never anything good about when everyone sees eye to eye because it's forced and it's manufactured. So we're not designed to see eye to eye,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and that's okay.
It is, but I mean, I think at the same time, a lot of these corporations and these politicians are profiting and campaigning off of division and keeping these two different
100.
opinions. I mean,
Yeah.
we Moderna and Pfizer, and then listening to these CEOs and all the nonsense. I think that's where we're at. They're capitalizing on that position.
Yeah, I would push back a little on the population thing. I don't think the world's overpopulated.
No?
And I think from a land mass to person to cultivation, we haven't even reached our peak. So, for instance, if you look at Africa, right, one of the biggest lacks that Africa has, and I'm not an expert on Africa, right, so I'm anecdotally here riffing a little bit, but Africa lacks energy, right? But to me, I see Africa as being purposely lacking in energy. Africa, in certain weather cycles, 2, 4, 6, 8, 1,000 years ago, has been super fertile. You put enough energy into unfertile land, you can create fertile out of it. But Africa doesn't have or isn't given or allowed the energy resources that nuclear, hydrogen, even oil or cheap oil could provide. And if you pump energy into a poverty-stricken country, there's a direct linear equation: more energy in, higher standard of living. If you're burning coal and wood, you don't have the energy output to run massive farm equipment to feed your population, right? So if we went to nuclear or hydrogen, or if you pay attention to Dr. Stephen Greer, who has briefed every president and every head of the CIA in our lifetime about how we have UFO technology, but more importantly, the energy mechanisms behind that UFO technology. If we were running our country off that, let alone the things we know we have, hydrogen, nuclear, and we shipped our oil over to Africa and sold it to them and pumped more energy into that country, Africa could be super, super fertile.
Yeah, and so,
right?
so I get that, but what's going on with this, man? Because before we were just talking about how there could be food shortages.
Yeah, right.
But then I'm saying the world could be overpopulated right now.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
we haven't even reached our potential.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like...
Yeah.
I'm like,
So
what
let
does
me
that
just
mean?
unpack the two, right? So with our current farming methodologies, when the sun shifts, as it's shifting, which it is now, if you pay attention to the sun cycles, certain areas that were fertile are going to become unfertile.
Okay.
Because, we're used to have perfect growing environment. That environment is going to go like this and shift over to here.
Agriculture, the whole industry would have to shift on a global scale in order to continue to sustain the human need for food.
Yeah, and you're going to have to be able to farm in areas that weren't farmable before, and areas that are farmable now will not be.
And so are those areas getting the energy required to be able to have the... I mean, I'm trying to connect the dots
so
here.
a little bit of yes. So if you've watched the land that China has been buying over the past 15, 20, 30, even 40 years, and you overlay it over the last sun cycle, it was super fertile. So the land that China's already bought, and you can go a layer deeper into that, sort of financially hijacked, right? And then there's a book by a guy named John, I think it's Hawkins, Economic Hitman. We used to take over countries based on bad energy deals. China's now doing it with bad economic deals. They've taken over a lot of land in Africa that, if the sun cycle prediction is accurate, will become fertile. But my secondary point...
But how long is that, like, payout on that? I'm just curious. Like, when's the next sun cycle?
It started...
It's a range, right? So
Yeah.
how long does it take? Is it like a 500-year...
Yeah,
like
from
how
the
long
guy I
does it
listened
take?
to, we're in several decades of a varying cycle.
Okay,
right?
so it takes under 100 years, under a century, for the cycle to shift
To play itself out.
within
And then we'll enter into another sun cycle.
within like the sun
Yeah.
cycle. Okay, I'm following what you're saying here.
But there's sort of two different conversations, because Africa has been poverty stricken due
And
to a
deprived,
serious
and deprived.
lack
I
of
mean-
energy being pumped in. So for the people that look at the world and they're like, wow, it's so poverty stricken, if there weren't restrictions, deliberate or not, on who's getting all this abundant energy that we have and have access to and have technology to do, poverty would lessen, right? But energy is restricted and held, and I hate the word manipulated, but it's a manufactured
Misused.
shortage. It's a misuse. It's a manufactured shortage. So there's going to be constant poverty because they don't have any energy to grow out of poverty. If you want a really good example, and I think we talked about this at one point, go watch the movie. I think it's on Amazon called "Our Name Is Salt" or "My Name Is Salt." And it's about a poverty-stricken farm family, and they farm salt. So the floods come in.
I feel like I've seen that.
Dude, they're farming it like
That's
with their
rough.
feet.
Well, yeah, and like even like cobalt and like you
Right.
know, all these precious metals are being mined by hand, and people are dying of cancer really young in Africa.
Right.
And it's pretty desperate.
Yeah.
And
Right.
they don't profit off of any of these deposits. It's
Right.
It's the big corporations.
Right.
And like so I honestly think presidents are puppets anyway, and like the corporations are really calling all the shots globally anyway.
Yeah, and I would say the investment groups that have the stake in the corporations, and then you can even go a layer up and talk about, you know, who funded the investment firms too, right? Because that's an interesting conversation as well. But you're right. Why isn't there diesel equipment to dig out those mines, right? There's no capital investment into those areas, so they're poor as shit. If someone came through and threw them a couple $1 million to start a mining company, they would do just fine.
And
so
wouldn't
they're
wouldn't they
restricted.
get
It's
more
artificial.
out?
It's artificial.
Wouldn't they get more out then at that point in time too? Like you'd start like mining the resource faster, but then that makes me wonder, do they want it to be trickled into the market at this slower rate at the expense of human life in order to create a shortage so there's a higher demand, and then also like you're paying people less to be less and risking their lives so they're less efficient, and then that actually maximizes profits? Like it's fucked.
Yeah, and also too, if you constantly have a poor underling class, you have chaos and you have control, right? So a lot of these people, they look at it in a sense of, why would I elevate you, right? Why would I elevate you because if I don't, I'm elevated. That's how they think. I'm not saying it's accurate.
So Kev, I've been going back and forth a little bit
Yeah.
with Mike here. What are your thoughts on?
No, I think it's great. I mean, you work in logistics. I've been in grocery for many years. I'm in the liquor industry now, and just seeing some of what the supply chain has looked like post-COVID, during COVID, you name it. It's very well possible. I mean, we talk about foods and goods and how you get that to the consumer, whether that's the cardboard box that ships it, whether that's the truck that takes it there. All these things, I think, are going to be contributing factors into a food shortage, let alone also coming back to the farming with this sun shift. I was thinking in my mind, like you look at places like Nebraska and Kansas that grow corn,
right?
Soybeans, whatever. What does that look like when we have to now move, these irrigation places to farm in different areas, right? I mean, obviously we know farming in Colorado can be challenging at times because of the Rocky Mountains or whatever, but
chaos.
It can be chaos. I mean, the western slopes known for peaches and things like that, and growing fruits, but when we start to move, to adjust with this, what is that going to look like?
So that's part of what Daniel Stulin is speaking about, is we're writing the new language for this next economic system. And he comments on how, the global elite's run is coming to an end. So if we choose to start to decentralize and, build our own smaller organizations that can then grow out and bigger, we now are being given opportunity to replace systems that, kind of in our lifetime, in our generation have griped and moaned about. Big corporations and big this and big that. Okay, that's great. We're in theory being given a chance to start to replace that as this system collapses, right? Because it is collapsing, and if you look around, you can see it all over the place.
There needs to be organization in
order
for that to even happen.
Right. And that's his point. He says if we don't organize, and figure out our own language, the language will be given to us. And the way he describes it, it's one of the isms, and it's not going to be good. Yeah. Right.
I mean, everyone's disagreeing right now. Like, it's how long do you think it would take? And this is just your personal opinion.
Yeah.
Let's say that everything shifts. Agriculture has to shift. Countries are divided. Energy is scarce. Food is scarce. There's like martial law happening. Like, how long does it take for people to come back together? Like a century, 2 centuries? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I do. So his point and other people's point is, I mean, they're just looking at two options. It either collapses quick or it's a slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
And history's shown it could be either or. What do you think? What do you think the chances are? Quicker or slower?
I mean, I kind of agree. It could go either way, of course, based on what we've seen, in the marketplace and just with farming in general. But I think it could go quick.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, seeing what we saw in 2020 with the depletion in grocery stores. I mean, that's when I started, stocking up military rations and trying to get myself, 60, 90, 120 days worth of a food supply.
Yeah.
Just being prepared for that. And people thought I was kind of nuts for doing so. But
Right.
I think it could go quick. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think there's a chance. And what I think is really interesting, if you listen to those goofballs over at the World Economic Forum, like they've already labeled it a polycrisis, right? So multiple things coming in at once, right? So we have an economic slow burn right now. That's kind of they're constantly talking about nuclear war. That would be quick. That would go super fast, right? They're talking about creating a new global dollar, right, by 2030. That's 6 years from now. That's not necessarily fast, right?
That's good, yeah.
So there's like long-term talks right now, medium-term talks, and quick talks. And neither one of them, any of them are ultimately beneficial. The upside is, to a certain extent, the smaller people, right, the underlings have time, right, to make choices and do different things, and push back.
Yeah.
And part of the earlier conversation of people finally going, oh man, whoa, that's true. That in itself is starting to push back a little bit.
So here's one little thing that it popped in my head as I'm recapping what we're talking about, and potentially like a little bit of like peace and prosperity for humankind within all this potential havoc.
Yeah, chaos.
Is if, myself included, if people could, and Kevin, you were actually talking earlier tonight, like you'd like to get out in the country more.
Yeah.
And like Mike, you got private land, so you're out there, you could do things on your land. But if humankind all kind of started migrating out of the cities and farming on their own land, then that would eliminate a food shortage. Like, we're talking on a global scale.
Right.
And then also, if you're spending all this time working the land, then you're removing yourself from social media and this Black Mirror device that's in front of the majority of humanity at all times.
Yeah.
So not only are you eliminating a food crisis by being self-reliant, but then you're also I wouldn't say eliminating, but you are decreasing a mental health crisis because of the technology that people consume. So there's like multiple benefits I could see to that.
Well, when you look at it realistically, though, I mean, with a percentage of people now, I don't think, we're dealing with people that don't really want to do anything. We're talking about all glory, no responsibility, instant gratification, instant results, hence social media and things of that nature. I think there is a percentage of people that do watch like homesteading videos and farming videos, and they get motivated, they get excited to do it. But it doesn't become a long-term commitment. Yeah. And I just don't see a strong enough, just the same way I talk about climate change, I don't see enough people getting on board to make any sort of difference at all. Sure. And then it's like, well, Kev, you got to be somewhat proactive. I just don't see enough people getting on board to do it.
Yeah. But if you can drive a demand to allow a homesteader or a small-scale farmer to make a living, then you're doing your point and purpose.
Sure.
Right? So not all of us will, work on a homestead, but if you vote with your dollars and you show up right and you start to place your money around and vote some of this stuff in or out with the way that you spend, that can be helpful as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, you do make a good point there, kind of supporting your local farmers and, going straight to the source, if you will.
Yeah.
Like you said, voting with your dollars. I like that.
Right.
We just came off of voting with your dollars with Target and Bud Light. So
with Target and Bud Light. Right. Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind too is, the other thing that's super fun to look into and research is the 3 words: problem, reaction, solution. Right. And that's a mechanism for control. Right. So if when there's a problem, food shortages, and then there's a reaction to it, there can be different people providing a solution. I can provide a solution for my small community once our homestead is full scale and provide food. So can Bill Gates, and he can 3D print food. Whose food are you going to eat? right? I can grow lettuce out of a hydro setup. So can Metacoggy, a company that's saying that they're going to dehydrate their lettuce, inject it with VLPs, their words, not mine, vaccine-like particles, and those are small, tiny bacteria that can take direction from electronic signals. Whose lettuce do you want to eat, mine or theirs? Right?
What is this? So you're saying that they are growing vegetables?
Yes.
That are
GMO.
100%. It's beyond a GMO.
But
it's
with
next level
things
GMO.
that are almost like neuro-connected.
Yes.
Like
and look up Caltech right now on your computer. Caltech did it 3 years ago, and Caltech is putting mRNA in food resources. That's a fact. That's a fact.
Mike, how far down the rabbit hole?
That's not though. That's a Caltech. That's a Caltech PhD funded research program that's sitting on their website.
And they're like trying to make nano technology embedded into food.
Yeah. Yeah, you can eat your vaccine. It's on their commercials. Metacoggy's commercial. ABC did a special on Metacoggy. ABC did a special on.
Okay. So this just reminded me of one thing. Right? Okay, so because there's some out of control shit. Like, why are they actually approving this fucking shit?
But it doesn't have to get approved because there's no legislation saying that they can't do it.
Like just like Jurassic Park, you know, like our boy says on there, he's all like, just because you can doesn't mean you should,
right?
Or some shit like that. But have you guys heard about the robots that can eat organic matter in order to maintain their charge? Have you
No.
Did you see that one?
No, I haven't heard that.
No.
Yeah, so I saw this article where it's like, you know, so potentially humans could be eaten by these robots or consumed for charging their batteries, and it's for military purposes. And there's like an article that came out where they're talking about how we understand your concerns, but that's not what these are for. But just imagine like an AI getting in there,
right?
So but to do nano in the food, there's some
nano has been in the meat since 2018.
What?
Yes, it has. Nano's been in the pigs coming from China.
They've
been giving pigs.
Nano? Have I eaten
They've
nano?
been giving mRNA to the pigs in China since 2018, and a lot of that meat comes over to the U.S.
So
it's already in the food supply.
What is the goal of putting nano in the food? Like, what does that accomplish? What are they trying to?
I mean, I can't speak for them, but I would assume the overarching goal is control, right? Like, why do they put pharmaceutics in the bodies of people who don't need them?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Why, if you just watch RFK Jr. on Joe Rogan, why do they put 74 what they call vaccines in a child who's being born essentially healthy? So, I mean, I can't speak for those people, but if there's profit in it, I haven't seen they, capital T-T-H-E-Y, they, the global elite who own the corporations we were just talking about, I haven't seen them not do something for profit.
Sure.
I mean, you go back, they got kids in mines for profit.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they put mRNA in the food for profit?
Jesus.
So also the interesting thing that
like...
that RFK Jr. says on many of his interviews, what they call vaccines are a $50 to $60 billion a year industry. The adverse events that are caused by those jabs and to treat those adverse events is a $700 billion a year industry.
Okay, so and then I'm going to let you go, Kev, but I'm going to say this quick. It's all for money, right? It's always for profit, and if it's from birth, when we've talked about this on Discussion Combustion a lot, pharmaceutical wants lifelong customers.
Right.
Why hasn't cancer been eliminated? Because it's so expensive to heal cancer, and it's like this fucking money
Can
pit.
I just interject quick and then I'll let you talk?
It's this money fucking pit. So like,
but here's the question people aren't asking when they make that statement, because everyone says, you know, but here's the question before that is, what's causing the cancer, and are they injecting you with the stuff that's causing the cancer to make the money off?
Dude, if it's cyclical, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
All right. 100%. I mean, I believe it's coming from the food that we put in our bodies. It's coming from the air that we breathe. It's coming from a lot of different areas, of course. And when we talk about mRNA, this is essentially a DNA rerouter, right?
Yeah.
In the term, well, where's the science behind that? With the science, that's always thrown around. Where's the doctor? You're not a scientist, this and that. I think that term in itself has already become overused and misrepresented.
Yeah.
Right? So, you listen to Dr. Robert Malone, who was on Rogan, back late 2020, 21. I'm sure. I know you listened to it.
Yeah.
A lot of controversial. This was the guy that had his hands in it, right? I mean, he was a part of the early development of this. It's not a vaccine. It literally reroutes your DNA.
It's gene therapy.
It changes your molecular structure, so to speak, to a core level.
Yeah.
And so now, if we're talking about that, you said what was a vaccine-like particles in lettuce.
VLPs.
That's very
VLPs.
VLP, vaccine-like
particles. Yeah.
Going into the lettuce.
Yeah.
This is being distributed through your local your grocery stores, and people are eating this stuff and just taking it all in.
Totally.
And to the lesser known, like I've never even heard about this shit until right now.
Yeah.
So this
problem,
really
reaction,
exists?
solution, right?
Really exists.
I can pull up the video and you can watch it, and then you can go on their website. You can go on
Damn it,
ABC. None of this stuff is hard to find. It's right out in your face,
Look.
and it always has been. They were wargaming COVID for 12 years before it happened. In 2002, when the 2 congressmen said absolutely not to the Patriot Act, and they were shipped envelopes of anthrax, I looked at my roommates and I said, I bet the intelligence community shipped them anthrax because they won't vote for the Patriot Act. Guess what happened a year later? It was disclosed in a congressional hearing that, yes, in fact, that anthrax came from Fort Detrick. They mocked it and called it Amerithrax, and they shipped the damn envelopes to the 2 congressmen who did not want to pass the Patriot Act. That's a fact. When they got caught doing that, the DOD refunded the organization, brought in Anthony Fauci, and started to offshore the stuff to China. The reason that there's a Wuhan lab is because they sent 2 envelopes of anthrax to 2 United States congressmen in 2002 and got caught doing it, and they started offshoring it. That's where Peter Daszak comes from. That's EcoHealth Alliance. That's 2002. They started to war game the release of bioweapons on American soil for 12 years before they actually did it. For 12 years. All this stuff is right out in the open. When they were wargaming that, they used to show it on the cover of New York Times. Hey, look, the military's wargaming a release of biowarfare in random town, and there were crisis actors laying there playing dead bodies, and the military would scoot around, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is how we're going to react to the situation. And, folks like myself, folks like others would say they're wargaming it. It means that they're actually going to do it. But, of course, it didn't happen the next day. Mm-hmm. So then it became that awful word conspiracy theorist that I just absolutely hate, where you have an opinion or you overreacted. It's a frog in boiling water. Why do you think that the Chinese and the Russian are never in a hurry? They don't flip presidents every 4 years. The DOD isn't in a hurry because they're not controlled by the president. They're their own operating unit in the U.S. They didn't have to be in a hurry, right? But all the information is right out in front of people at surface level. You don't have to dig for any of this stuff. They usually tell you about it.
Sure.
Right? Yeah.
Well, I think that kind of piggies back too to just the general public has been conditioned, and I don't want to say brainwashed, but I guess we could use that term, by the mainstream media, right?
Yeah,
And the fear-mongering,
Yeah.
and the Twitter feeds and stuff like that. Every time you click on something, it's just fear, fear, fear. Don't trust that. Just like I was saying earlier, this is fact, that's fiction. Well, it's like, until you do your own research, I guess to echo off your point, if it's front and center and you dive into some of these topics, and really start to compare sources and listen to what you feel and make that educated decision, you can't just take the shit at face value, right?
Right.
I mean,
No.
that's how we all end up here with these kind of opinions.
So in the 1990s, during Iraq I, when they lied to us and said that they were manufacturing weapons of mass destruction, 85% of the country went along with that.
Oh, yeah.
And said, well, they must be. Well, they weren't. The UN brought those weapons of mass destruction to Iraq and looked at Saddam Hussein and said, hey, you mind holding these? And, if they end up over in Iran and you spread them around Iran, but not going to bitch, right? Well, he didn't. So then they started a war to go get them. 85% of the country bit that hook. 85% of the country.
That's massive.
That's huge.
That's massive.
The Patriot Act was supported at some of the conservative radio I listened to, like Glenn Beck. He's at least humble enough to go, I got duped by that. Daniel Horowitz, Conservative Review, Steve Day's show, they've all three admitted, I got duped by that, man. I saw that Patriot Act, thought, we got to protect ourselves.
I mean, what a great name, too.
What a great name. The Patriot Act is what they're using to put parents who say, I don't want my kids taught critical career theory in school. They go on that list. Capital T, traditional Catholics are now on the Patriot Act list. People that go to Latin Mass are now on the Patriot Act list. So, 20 years ago when people were saying, we shouldn't be doing this, it will evolve. Oh, no, that's conspiracy theory. That's your opinion. Slow boil. We're here.
I'm sure the unvax are probably on that list. Yeah,
because I believe from what I've heard, when you go to the doctor, which I don't, at all. I haven't been a primary physician in 15 years.
I don't believe in it either, Mike.
I don't put it. I don't. No one needs
I'd put
to take
dentistry in there as well.
Yeah. I go to the dentist, and that's it.
Yep.
Yeah. But yes, I believe when you check in now, they're saying vaxxed or not, and they're clicking a button, and you're at probably absolute. We're at probably
immediate
absolute
database.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You're immediately on the no-fly list, so to speak.
So when I'm saying VLPs right now, and people are like, "Oh, where'd you get that? You probably had to dig deep." That was someone saying in 1990, there ain't no weapons of mass destruction over there, and it took years. That was in 22 when people were saying that anthrax ain't from overseas, y'all. It ain't. And sure shit, 1 year later, Fort Detrick. But by then, everyone's like, la, 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 what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Yep. And all the people that are like, that is not American-made anthrax. They don't even care anymore.
Sure.
They don't even care anymore. They sent anthrax to 2 freaking congressmen who wouldn't vote in the Patriot Act. Fact. Fort Detrick. Look it up.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's there. History doesn't lie. And, you go back to that time frame, too. I mean, this is around the time that they were trying to do SARS. Yep. Right? Remember when SARS was severe acute respiratory syndrome, which was the first attempt at COVID.
Right.
You look at Mad Cow. You look at all this shit. It didn't take then because they didn't have the Twitters and the Instagrams and the Facebooks and the alerts, COVID alert, COVID's in your area. All this stuff to really condition people. And obviously it's a controversial topic, but look, we're over 3 years past this deal, and we have learned that a lot of what we've been told is absolute nonsense. Yeah. I mean, there's even questions to say if this thing it was even real. Right. You know what I mean? So these are conversations that need to be had. Yeah.
If you want a really good lay of the land, go into your search engine and look up Dr. David Martin, Martin, EU, European Union, Parliament. He gave a speech 2-3 months ago, which he gave 10 years ago when he called out what was coming, right? Because he had the information. He gives the whole 60-year reference point for COVID, right? So they started to modify and manipulate SARS viruses in the 1960s. By 1990, it was a fact, and Pfizer released a document that said we will never be able to make a vaccine for these viruses because they modify inside the human body too quickly. And in 2002, when Anthony Fauci got funded post-Amerithrax, they started to roll more gain of function and start to release them into general populations and measure the results of those viruses. And this guy is in the inner circles, and he's essentially a whistleblower, and he goes through the whole 60-year time period. You can look it up. It takes about 22 minutes of your time, and you get a 60-year historic view of the intelligence community and the DOD farting around with SARS viruses. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at like Clorox and some of those Lysol and stuff like that. It kills coronavirus. Like this was written in their, description of what this can do well before we even knew the term COVID. Yeah. Right. Hence coronavirus. Yeah. Right. That's where. So it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I still personally believe it was some sort of mutation of a flu, maybe, extreme flu case. You look at the numbers. Why does the flu go away and it's all COVID cases? There's just too many things that don't make sense.
Yeah. So my whole thing with this is because, the rabbit hole could be completely fact, right? Like everything within there. And I know you said that you don't like the whole conspiracy thing. I
don't like the word.
Yeah, that
the
whole
phrase.
Yeah, that
it's
phrase.
Not a word. Yeah.
Yeah. So and I get that, and the deeper we all dig, the more truth there is to be found. I do believe in that as well. So within all this chaos, within all this misinformation and psychological warfare upon the population of the world, right? Because essentially they want us to mentally fall in line and then physically do what's needed. So there's like this whole level of control that is being attempted upon the global population, people who don't know better, right? So I believe in all that's happening. Okay, I'm just going to go on record and be like, I don't trust any of it. I believe all that shit is happening.
I can point you to the document and you can read it.
I mean, without even reading it, my subconscious and intuition, like I know that it's not to be trusted. Yeah. Like, and I need to listen to my gut, right? So within all of this, my question is that because it could come at us from a lot of different angles. We have the fourth turning. We have like these 5 different things that are all happening that creates the fourth turning, and to be able to exist in this, in my opinion, and scientific opinion, short blimp of time within the time scale that is known. Like, a human life is not that long.
Right.
So how do we find inner peace and like a sanctuary within ourselves, like a place of fortitude mentally, to still enjoy existence even with like all of this happening? I know it's a long question.
No, that's a good question.
But that's my question for you is like, because you seem like...
Yeah, so I think they're about to try and merge them.
No,
right?
But what are you doing? Like, not they. Like, I want to know personally what you're doing to maintain like a level of daily appreciation and like how you're still enjoying life even with all of this existential things happening
all the
around
wrenches
you.
Getting thrown at us. Yeah, so I feel like I'm living my dream, right? So I feel like I've been telling people for decades that one day I'm going to move out into the woods and get weird, right? Well, that's kind of where I'm at right now, right? We moved out into the woods and we're getting weird out there, So for us, when I was in college, I'd do very, very poor in my core competency classes for my degree. I'd do very, very well in the electives that I didn't even have to take. When I took white collar crime, and read about Bayer, sending really nasty jabs down to Brazil and infecting people with disease, or the welfare system versus the welfare system, and all these things that are going on. And you're like, wow, this whole system is so corrupt. Like, how can I get myself out of that system? And kind of made that essentially a lifelong goal, right? Now, my income comes from being essentially self-employed and in industries that are outside the system, and we live in the woods and we're getting weird and we're raising animals. To me, the comfort comes from the sense of hard work to being is sustainable and away from modern day systems as possible, was still getting the joy out of enjoying modern day systems, but not being directly reliant. Part of the process that we're in, it could go one way or another, a multitude of ways, but part of the bad way that it's being directed right now, and you can look this up, as smart cities. They're looking to give people all the luxuries and all the joys and all the quick reward at the touch of a button without having to do anything for it. Not only is that a sense of paganism, but if you look into the Mouse City research that they did in the 60s and 70s, it doesn't end up well. So we've made a commitment to not fall in to too much of the modern day luxuries, and make sure that we're working hard and getting a lot of joy out of that work and staying focused on that.
So I just have a secondary question on that, because that's a good answer. And I can see how there is like a lot of peace and solitude within those decisions. However, like what would your advice be for individuals who are more embedded within the psychological norms that are pushed upon us? Like somebody is sensing that it's off. They're not centered in their happiness. Life is not fun for them. They don't have the resources to have their own place and start farming on their own land. Like, how would you suggest they cope?
So I think if I was going to do just rough anecdotal math, and I'm basing this off in an interesting article, right? Martin Luther King was sitting in jail in Birmingham and was arrested for peacefully protesting. And he kind of broke the country down into thirds. He said, I know this third because you're the freedom riders and the civil rights people, and you want to make a change. And I know this third because you're the racists, and actual racists, not like we just flippantly use that word today, real racists, right? But I respect you because I know what you're doing, I know what you stand for, and I know what your goals and objectives are. He said the middle third was the scariest to him and the most dangerous third of the country, because that third is thinks they're looking at the situation, but they're watching the nightly news and they're not having fact-based conversations. They're having narrative-based conversations, and they're the people saying, oh, I don't think it's that bad, or it's both sides, or you have an opinion, or you're a conspiracy theorist. And what happens to those people, if you look at it sort of from a biblical perspective, the devil or Satan is cunning and draws those people in, right? Because he gives them easy use.
Because you don't have a moral line that you're standing on.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. And that's where an evilness will play. So those people tend to gravitate over this way where the actual bad is happening, and this third has to fight even harder to try and pull that third over. I'm most focused on that middle third right now, having smaller conversations with people and conversations in my community. Because I think, to your point, some of those people that are in more of a woe is me, life is really hard, how do I find joy? I think they're caught up in the spirit of the age, and the spirit of the age is telling them over and over again, you have to do all this to find joy, and and it's unachievable stuff, and really being able to find joy is right here. And those people will buy into that dialectic so that they're constantly miserable, and that's their thing. That's became their identity. Yeah.
So you've been kind of reaching, and sorry, Kev.
No, go ahead.
Do you got any
No, go ahead.
questions?
I'll finish up after.
Okay, because it's interesting.
Arthur and I always get long talking.
I love it. I'm
Yeah.
just sitting here like,
Yeah.
it's interesting to me.
It is interesting. It's interesting, and
I'll answer your question too.
yeah, the thing that you talk about is just it gets me thinking, and I want to understand more layers behind why, where your thought process comes from, and it logically makes sense to me, right? So no, but what do you got, Kev?
Well, so I mean, your question to Mike was, kind of how do people find self peace, happiness? How do you, be centered, grounded, all that stuff during all of this stuff? And I think that it kind of goes back to something that we've talked about for a long time. Like you said, get weird in the woods. That was a goal of yours.
Yeah.
Set goals and achieve them.
Right.
So kind of going back to something that we've always hit home on this show, Art, is absolutely set those goals. Challenge yourself daily, doing all those things. But also, I think what I would add to that is don't bury your head in the sand at the same time. Yeah, I think it is important to know what's going on and have educated opinions about, geopolitics and current events and things like that. I think it is important to know that kind of stuff so you can make educated decisions for yourself, for your family, for your spouse, whoever, to better fit your goals and achievements as well. I think that would be my take from that.
Yeah, and having a really educated and grounded and fact-based, opinion or judgment on the situation will help us stay out, because, that's what I see too in the 1990s, which is kind of where I grew up. It became this thing where everyone was allowed to have an opinion. Well, if everyone has an opinion, then what's the objective truth? And then what's the morality that we're all following? If we all have opinions, then objective truth and morality, they're still there, but they're not focused on. And then all of a sudden there can be no direction because everyone has a different, essentially, value set and especially opinions. That's when things get really bad. So if there was a larger focus on people doing challenges, finding joy, and kind of breaking through, I think when folks are told things over and over again and are getting down and out, I think some of that is manufactured.
Yes.
And they're allowing themselves to sit in that. If you look at the direction that...
But they don't even know they're sitting in it.
Yeah, I would agree. And some of the larger corporations that I kind of refer to as they, capital T, sort of in the formal they, like as a group, they're going to push that. If you look at the studies of Mouse City, what's a Mouse City? A Mouse City is when they took male and female mice and threw them into a city, and they gave them everything. Unlimited food, unlimited water, unlimited joy, unlimited pleasure, perfect temperature. That's called a smart city. They're already talking about those, and they're already starting to roll them out. Cleveland, Ohio wants to be the first smart city.
Well, here's the fucking thing. Is like, if all you're experiencing throughout your life is pleasant and non-struggle, then that becomes bored. It becomes redundant. Like, struggle is a part of existence. Having doubt within your mind is a part of existence. It's important to have these type of emotions of overcoming. The months where I thought I was going to get let go of selling cars, I always remember this. I was selling cars, and it was a 3-month quota. And if you missed it 2 months in a row, if you didn't fucking sell the right amount of cars, which backstacked, like, it would add up if you had to sell extra on that next month if you didn't hit that last one. Like, you had to hit a 3-month quota. And I was down to the 3rd month. And it was grind time or die time. And I fucking sold those cars. And I was under pressure. I was uncomfortable. But the joy and sensation I felt when I was like, fuck, I'm cut from that cloth. Like, I can do this. I can overcome adversity. That is what has shaped me into who I am today.
Right.
And like struggle needs to be part of existence. I truly believe in that. If you just have this cush life that is easy peasy all the time, that's why the Mouse City failed.
Do you know it failed? Do you know the story?
No, but like
I was going to ask you, what do you think happened in Mouse City? And then can we tie the word equity into what you just said? Yeah, what do you think happened? It collapsed, right? What do you think happened?
Intuitively, I know that it collapsed. It didn't work.
Did you go a layer down from the collapse? What happened to the male mice and what happened to the female mice? Do you know? It's very specific.
They stopped like procreating.
Yes.
And things like...
What did the females start to do? Where's my phone? This is my phone. They became narcissistic, and they couldn't move away from the mirrors in the Mouse City. All they did was...
They put mirrors in the Mouse City?
All they did was worship themselves.
They put mirrors in the Mouse City?
To people taking... Yes.
Shut the fuck.
Selfies. Yes, they did.
Yep.
What happened to the male mice? What happened to the male mice? What happened to them? They became effeminate. A lot of them became homosexual, and they stopped breeding, and they started eating for the few mice that still bred, they were eating the kids to get rid of any competition because they didn't want any more challenges. And then the Mouse City collapsed.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah. I mean, that's a good representation of what I mean, because I think Schween, our good buddy Schween, just sent us. There's a city that they're you mentioned, was it Cleveland or Cincinnati?
Smart cities, yeah.
Yeah. So some of these there's some are over.
It's called the Line.
Yeah, the Line in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
I saw an advertisement for it or a projection of what it could be.
It's a smart city.
And I immediately just clicked out of it. I'm like, I don't want any part of this.
It's an interesting concept, but it's a concept that is there to create a psychological population control that you are unaware of.
Yeah.
And like that's what's happening with our smartphones right now.
Yeah, it is
live action.
Yeah,
I mean that's why this episode will be demonetized unless if you a real one YouTube and leave it up like that.
It won't.
No,
and that's fine. We already
know
knew
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
but like that's funny because even just having this conversation on this type of platform, like it.
Yeah,
and who cares about the consequences? It's a layer of truth, and like.
In Oxford, London, they rioted because they forced that into a smart city, and you could only leave the city 100 days out of the year in your car, and every time you left in your vehicle over 100 days, they taxed you so much you couldn't afford your vehicle, and those people are currently rioting. Back to the document, when you said this stuff kind of feels weird and coordinated, if you read the UN Agenda 20 document signed by 174 countries in 1992, it states exactly what we're experiencing right now. Smart cities is in there. The use of the word sustainability to ramp down natural food production and increase artificial food production is in there. 30 by 30. The Dutch farmers have been rioting for 18 months because the Dutch government came in and said we're taking 30% of the farmland by 2030. That's 30 by 30. They've been rioting for 18 months. What did Joe Biden just say this week? He said, and of course he said 2020 because he's delusional, the United States government is going to appropriate 30% of the land by 2020, meaning 2030. We're in 30 by 30 right now in this country as well. Spain's doing it.
I feel
Britain's
like it's going to be
doing
tougher in America than most places, right?
They're taxing people out of their farmland. You can't pass down family farms hardly at all anymore. If Kevin is getting a farm from his great-great-great-great-grandpa, he's getting taxed on the value of the farm now, not what it was purchased for. So it's hard for people to keep farms in the family right now.
That's crazy.
But he just said it out loud that they're just going to take at least 30% of the farmland.
Yeah,
so that's another important document to look at. 1992, UN Agenda 21, 174 countries signed on to it. And that was 30 years ago.
Almost 30, 31 years ago.
Correct. So all this has been laid out. Yeah. And more interesting, if you look at the UN, who invented the UN and what does his brother do? Do you know the answer to those two questions? Julian Huxley started the UN in 1947 in San Francisco. That was a year after the OSS turned itself into the CIA. And 11 years before that, in 1931, Aldous Huxley wrote A Brave New World, and his brother modeled the UN off A Brave New World. That's also a fact because in 1961, when Aldous Huxley was passing away, he wrote Brave New World Part 2 and said in there, this is not a prediction. It's not fiction, it's a prediction. And my brother modeled the UN off this book.
Interesting. This is so juicy. I need to I need to hit the head really quick.
Okay, I'm gonna keep it going though.
You keep going. We
Yeah.
can't stop this. Normally, I'm like we try to wrap it up.
No, we're not
But
wrapping it up.
this is gonna be a long episode.
This could be a very
I
long
Told you
episode.
I'd bring the four
this.
pepper fire.
Well, so yeah, the next
Yeah.
thing that was a perfect segue into because you talk about prediction, right? And the last time you were on, in 2021, which you brought your predictions.
I did.
Let's revisit that.
All right.
Let's revisit kind of what that looked like. Because I want to say it was like late December 21 you were on.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, here's what's going to happen in 2022.
In 22, right.
You haven't been back
Yeah.
on since. So for the listeners, viewers that did listen and see that, let's kind of revisit it.
Yeah, cool. So it was post production and Patreon, I think, when we made these. So the two that I feel like I got spot on, as I said, the jabs would be killing people and enough people to be noticed by essentially normies. I feel like that's correct. I still feel like we have a ways to go, but it's absolutely confirmed that
100%.
the jabs, adverse events, are causing extreme damage, death, disability.
Huge concerns with blood clotting.
Yeah.
What did they
People
call
are
it?
getting-
Myocarditis.
People are getting thrombosis, blood clots in their eyeballs.
It's not good.
Your eye is one
Ball
of the hardest
palsy.
membranes to cross.
Yes.
And it's crossing the eyeball membrane.
There's no question that there's been adverse reactions to these vaccines, and it needs to be stated.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Right.
The media's
Yeah.
not going to touch
Correct.
it. It's real.
Yeah, it's super real. Economic collapse, I feel like we're in at least the realm of 2008, and some statistics are saying we've even dropped past certain metrics of the 1930s. I understand that there's more assets baked in now than there was in the 1930s, but if you compare any historical economic downfall or collapse, I say we're in one right now.
I mean, it's just look around, right?
Yeah.
Look at the situation. Look at inflation. Look at people are struggling. It's
Right.
not good.
Yeah. Prices
good.
aren't going down as $10 for a gallon of bleach. And to continue the conversation about the UN, one world government, one world religion, one world currency. FedNow launches in July of this year, so that's in a couple weeks. That's the start of the CBDC, that's central bank digital currency. And the UN is also talking about, and the WHO, a digital passport, digital dollar, digital travel pass.
Everything's going to go digital. I mean, the TSA
Right.
is talking about doing facial recognition now and just
Yeah.
bypassing all the
Right.
other stuff.
Yeah, right
Right?
now it's opt-in. I'll just not fly. I don't really like to travel to begin with. But
Really?
Yeah.
So you would say I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah. I'm good, thank you.
I'll take one, Art.
Yeah. And then the other two predictions was that the 2020 election. So my exact words was that the 2020 election would flip or overturn because there would be essentially enough states to say our electors need pulled back. That hasn't happened at all. But I do think that there's a greater awareness of the significant amount of fraud that's in our elections. But I would say, as far as a prediction landing, I was a bit off target on that one.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, look, like
Yeah.
you said, you hit for 500. If we're talking
yeah,
batting averages.
Yeah. And then the last one was China would invade Taiwan. I thought it would happen by now. It
But instead,
didn't.
Ukraine happened.
Yeah, Ukraine happened, and we can go into that and the color revolution that happened in 2014 through Victoria Nuland. Most people who supported and rah Ukraine don't even know that existed. So my point to them is go grab a rifle and go die over there if you really support the war. I personally don't, but Blinken was just over in China and said that absolutely the U.S. stands behind a one China policy and Taiwan is not an independent nation, and that happened this week. China also rolled another cruiser battleship through there, so I think it's just a matter of time before China officially overtakes Taiwan.
You think it's going to happen here in 23?
I'd say by 2025.
Okay. So
Yeah, I was seeing 25, 26.
Yeah.
Were kind of like the prediction.
But they're going to start initiating that by the end of this year? Or
Yeah,
you think by
I mean,
20?
the folks I listen to, like, Scott Ritter. So Scott Ritter, when we were talking about the Iraq war over the fake WMDs, Scott Ritter was a UN inspector who said there are no WMDs over here. It's garbage and it's fake, and they just banned them from the news even back in the 90s. He's a pretty legit guy. He has like a 30-year track record as an inspector for the UN and doing projects worldwide. He said that he's saying that we're essentially already in World War III. It just looks different than the traditional World War.
It's been a computer.
Right?
It's been a
exactly.
technology-based
Cyber warfare.
Yeah, cyber warfare.
And bioweapon warfare and information warfare as well.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I personally would put a label on that we're already in a type of World War III, and unfortunately, in my opinion, we're already in somewhat of a cold civil war in this country. To your point about the division, I think it's manufactured. I could cite data points on that, but I think it's manufactured, and the division has created a cold civil war.
And do you think how much of the percentage of a result of this civil war do you think is because of social media?
Yeah, no, I think that social media was the impetus. So when you look at Daniel Stulin, who I've spoken about several times, he's saying in 2008 the global economy collapsed and it went kaput.
Mm-hmm.
They've kept it on life support the whole time. So then the question is why? Why didn't they just let it collapse in 2008? My opinion is lack of technology, and knowing that if they can get to AI and they can get to the digital dollar and they can get to the digital face passports, then you're in the technocracy, and the technocracy spoke about in Brave New World, in 1984, in Fahrenheit 451, in Animal Farm, right? And technocracy was introduced into the White House in 1971, 1972, 1973, when David Rockefeller went to a guy named Brzezinski, who was a professor of globalism, and said, hey, I'll fund you to spread this sense of globalism around the world, right? So, I think that, we're again in this kind of, crazy transition point, and social media became an impetus for this, sort of radicalization of me, right? Rather than more of an us mentality, it became super narcissistic, and people are very, very afraid to give up those digital identities that they have in that digital dopamine that they get on social.
It's worked.
I totally agree. Yeah,
It's
worked.
I'm victim
really
to
well.
the shit too. I'm victim to it too. Like I've been addicted to
Everyone
social
has
media
been.
and spent
At some
way
point.
too much fucking time like
I hate
scrolling mindlessly. And I've this will not be the last time I say this, because I'm sure I'll have another day where I slip up. But the days where I do spend like 3 to 5 hours, like you get off work, you don't do anything productive, you literally just sit there and start scrolling.
Right.
It's become so meaningless.
Yeah.
And especially once you're aware of how you feel and you start looking at yourself and you're conscious as I am an observer of myself and of my conscious.
Yeah.
When you start observing yourself, it frees you from that emotional hold. When you're observing your emotions, you're no longer living your emotions, you're observing them.
Yeah.
So there's like this area of conscious awareness where you're conscious of, okay, I'm thinking about this, I'm observing that I'm thinking about this, I'm observing that I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling these emotions about this. Once you can become an observer of your life, that's when you can truly start appreciating the now. And even though there's all these existential crises around us, you can at least enjoy that moment in time, that blimp in time that is right now, that is current. And so like, in my personal opinion, that's my preach. That's what I want to say to anyone tuning in, watching, or listening. Let's observe how we're feeling about things. And just for example, the other night, like 2 nights ago, I was chilling. Like I went on a walk already. I was, on my computer working all day. And then I started to look at social media after work, and I was like, on the couch, kind of slumped, like looking at it for a reasonable amount of time, upwards of an hour. And I look outside, and it's looking beautiful. And I removed myself, like I need to go on another walk. I need to go on another walk today. And then once I removed myself from the screen and actually got out again and started moving my legs, breathing in the air around me, observing my thoughts, how I'm feeling, like I found a bit of inner peace that evening. And with life being a blimp of time in this big grand time scale, which is just the planet Earth, not even the universe, that's important. So, because I know we're talking about a lot of different things here, and I need to drive that point home, because like we're constantly getting bombarded. Like what are social norms? Are social norms even healthy? Like, are the social norms that are being pushed upon us even healthy?
Right.
Absolutely not.
So it's like there's all these layers to this. So let's observe our emotions, let's observe our thoughts, and try to remove ourselves from the noise
Yeah.
I agree. And I was talking to my mother a little bit earlier this week, and she encouraged me to do a little bit of research on something that's called earthing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. Basically like taking your socks and shoes off and just standing on the earth.
Yeah.
Not concrete, not man-made shit.
Right.
On the grass, on the dirt.
Yeah.
15 minutes a day can make massive, massive impacts to your physical and mental health.
Yeah.
Something as simple as that.
Right.
Rather than spending that 15 minutes scrolling the nonsense.
Right.
Just those little adjustments, I think, can make a huge difference.
Or even scroll the nonsense while you're just standing on.
No, because that
negates it.
negates it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
But I think, 2 points is one, getting back to technocracy is the worship of science and the worship of technology. Go back to 1961 and listen to President Eisenhower's farewell address. He touches on the coming reign of technocracy because he saw it coming. People think that older traditional concepts of standing on the ground or vitamins and supplements or getting your hands dirty like we've spoken about tonight are foo-foo and wives' tales and stuff. But they sustained a huge human population up until right now. And the more we've removed ourselves from what's kind of referred to as natural law, the more unnatural we've gotten, and the more people have disconnected with their ability
and
to
the
tap
more
into
profits
joy right now.
have soared.
And
I
the
just need to
profits have
throw that
soared.
in
Yeah,
there.
no, thank you. And the profits have soared. You've been kind of a step ahead in the conversation tonight because what you just talked about with the scrolling through, that's what a smart city is going to be. It's going to be nothing but constant engagement in a sense of this. If you listen to Johann Harari, who's number 2 at World Economic Forum. He gave a commencement speech at MIT. MIT is a big school. We can all agree on that, right? December of 2022. In his commencement speech, he notates that in the smart cities, people are going to be super bored. This is in his commencement speech at MIT because they don't have jobs, because the AI took their jobs. So what do we do with all these people? We're going to hook them up to goggles and shoot them up with drugs, and they're just going to enjoy themselves. But guess what? This is the big part that he follows up with. You'll have no political clout because you won't be labor anymore, and you're not an economic driver. So just those 2 or 3 things to people should make people want to work hard and be challenged and be self-sufficient and not have the instant dopamine rushes, and get out and figure out what you want out of this transition and work your butt off for it. Because if not, the language that we started the episode talking out, that's the language they're using to describe your existence. So if sitting there scrolling on your phone sounds awful or bad, wait until you're literally just plugged into the Matrix with a drug drip in your arm and just flailing out in no man's land. So if you really want to have a different language than that, just put in the hard work that traditionally has always had to be put in to be successful, and don't disconnect with traditional values.
Well, yeah, it's always yielded results. I mean, when you look back on it, we talked about with hustle over handouts, right? That whole thing, hustle over handouts.
Yeah. Right.
Everyone wants that instant gratification. That's why these smart cities and these ideas will take, because people don't want to do shit.
Right.
But as we saw in this mice test,
in the Mouse City, right?
Mouse City, it didn't work.
No,
it did not yield the results that people want to see.
Right.
But it sounds good in the now.
It sounds good in the now, right? It sounds safe. It sounds predictable. It sounds less chaotic. So the other thing we have to realize too with all the chaos, because I know you keep touching on that, and it sounds all doom and gloom.
No, but that's part of the process.
Right. Most of the chaos is manufactured. Just say no to it.
No, but chaos. Okay, so there's different layers of chaos, obviously. There is the chaos that anything could happen at any time in any non-linear fashion. And then there's also the manufactured fear-mongering chaos that is created to discourage courage.
Yes, thank you.
They want to discourage courage.
Yes.
And it's a battle that we all must fight. So my challenge that I have for everyone tuning in right now is, right now you could pause this podcast. Right now you could end it. Whatever you want to do. Put down all the technology. Put it all down. See if you could last 10 minutes by yourself within your own brain. Like, if you can't last up to 10 minutes and, like, maybe have one moment where you kind of laugh and not take yourself so seriously, because that's really important.
Yeah.
Is to not take life so seriously all the time and actually enjoy the little moments, enjoy your own idiocy, because I know I'm a fucking dumbass.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an idiot. But, like, I really do enjoy... I feel like I'm an intellectual idiot because I enjoy life, but I'm also able to laugh at everywhere where I fuck up. But I'm also aware that I fucked up. So there's, like, this level of awareness. Okay, I'm kind of... This is like tiramisu. Like, I'm just eating dessert, and there's more layers underneath.
Yeah.
But that's the thing with it is challenge yourself to just remove technology. And I'll just give a bit of piece of advice. If you want to really be successful with this, go on a walk, because if you could just go on a walk, put down your phone and go on a 10-minute walk, then you're going to be surprised the amount of thoughts that you can process, what you start rationalizing within what's important in your own life, and how moving this beautiful vessel that you were gifted, because we are the most intelligent beings on this planet. We're self-aware.
Right.
We can drive cars. We can take off into space. Like, humans are fucking epic.
Yeah.
So, like, we have this vessel, and that's never echoed. I never hear that on social media. It's only in books that are obscure where it's like, we have this, we are born the most top thing here, and yet we are glued to, like, we're psychologically being controlled and not even finding our own realization of potential in this existence. And it's fucking, it kind of pisses me off, but at the same time, it kind of makes me feel a little bit of reassurance, because I'm hearing your self-awareness, what you're doing in order to find peace within your family and community. Like, I know, Kev, like, you have your different ways, and like, I have my own awareness that, like, I've found peace within the chaos. And I feel like that is, like, a really underlying topic of this entire discussion is like, how do we find peace within the chaos? I don't really know where to go. Like, I don't have a specific... It's food for thought, what we're talking about here on Discussion Combustion.
No, I can, because what you just touched on right there, and you can jump in before I go on a riff. That's part of why you keep hearing trans. Trans just isn't about sexuality. Trans is about transhumanism, and transhumanism is the next step in the process if we don't start to rewrite the language for the next step that we're going. And I can riff on that.
What, like, trans... Like, okay, because where my intuition took me there, if we're talking, like... If we're... And I'm talking century, like, long-term goals of... So it's like almost...
So when you said that a human being is the most beautiful advanced thing on this planet, is starting, especially in the 1990s, that started to get untaught, right? Because you hear people say, oh, humans are a scourge on the earth, or, oh, white people, and my this and my that. Now you're hearing that more and more in the critical queer, critical gender, critical race theories, and people try and put human beings down. But the fact of the matter is we are an epic race of thing in being, in source. And the trans movement is saying we're not good enough, and we should be changing or modifying ourselves or manipulated.
That does kind of contradict what I'm saying right now, as far as like, and almost like for mental health, you have to have a level of acceptance. There are some things out there that we cannot change.
Right.
And so there has to be a level of acceptance and peace within that adversity. Right. So, but within like, okay, so I'm going to go kind of different here on like, okay, if people are augmenting their bodies and we're talking long term and we're talking food that we digest is augmented and all this stuff, like, is the long term to, and we talk about the smart cities and all these different things coming together. Is it all to just create a population that is basically almost non-conscious, like they're not even thinking for themselves? Like, it's basically just people walking to the beat of a drum.
Yeah, non-enlightened.
But then what value are these individuals bringing to society to even have them?
Well, that's what he said in the MIT commencement speech, is you have no value, therefore you have no political clout, and you have no economic clout.
You're essentially just existing with no worry.
100%. Yeah,
that's
and
what
you
it
think
is.
that's the goal, right? Well, it gives me more time to be creative, or be myself, or be left alone, or be lazy, but none of those things produce anything. So you're a non-productive individual.
Well, and it's all about self-fulfillment, and like we've already touched on, like the fulfillment of overcoming your own personal adversity or hardship.
Yeah.
And sometimes people die trying to do those things. Like sometimes you die and you fail to your addiction or like whatever it may be So
challenge.
like to overcome stuff like that, because here's the thing is like, what's the point of life? Like, it's not like where we're going with this conference. It's like, what is the point of life, and what actually creates meaning toward a being? And I'm going to speak like fourth dimension about humans. We are a being that is self-aware, you know? So what could create a fulfilling life for a self-aware entity? You know, and like, especially an intelligent one that has technology. So it's like, how can individuals, so I guess it could segue into like, you know, what, as we've asked you, what would the piece of advice for humanity be so everyone...
I mean, to me, it's just continue to be a human.
Yeah.
Right? Like, be a human being. Think, challenge, risk, reward, right? Like, there's roles, right? People do have roles, right? There's an organization to it, right? I've gone back to having faith in God, right? And moving away from some of the more new age esoteric stuff that I had kind of connected to. You know, for me, that's been fantastic, right? But, you know, these simplified and easy grab and go solutions to stuff are not working out. We've just gone through a 3-year period where we can riff on that and talk about how they don't work out, snap out of it, and agree, you know, that we want to get back to being human beings, right? And run off a sense of morality and a sense of objective truth, because, you know, it's the pendulum's way out here, right? And it's going to start to come on back, and that's the new phase, the new language, the new system, the new operating system that we have to develop, and we'll have a choice and a participation in that.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at. I mean, that's good advice. Like you just said, coming off of a major, and we're going through a major change, major energy shift. A lot of things happening.
Yeah.
A lot of things happening. And to your point, Art, you know, challenging folks to the 10 minutes. I mean, I talked about my 24-hour no phone challenge back in January that I did. It was fantastic.
Ooh, yeah.
24 hours. I mean, you know, there's emergencies that can take place, things like that. There's things you can do, but man, put the technology down. I agree with it.
Yeah.
Get rid of the nonsense. One of the best things I did was get away from mainstream media, and I did that several years ago.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And go play it. Get weird in the woods.
Yeah, get weird in the woods.
Let me lay out some expectations for this, though, because the last thing I want to do is to recommend something and then not try to help people along that journey. So it's really important to understand that you might feel a sense of anxious. Like, if you do the 24-hour challenge, you put your phone down, you turn it off, you're like, I'm leaving it there. Like, you are going to want to go pick it up. You're going to want to turn on social media. You're going to want to watch a shit ton of Netflix. This challenge, if you sit there and watch Netflix for fucking 24 hours when you're putting down your phone for 24 hours,
right,
you failed that
That's
challenge.
Fair. It's like giving up smoking with dip. Right?
Yeah. So that's the whole point behind this. And look, maybe you don't need to start, like, that's why I was saying the 10, and then Kevin's college level, I'm grade school.
Well, but to be
like,
fair,
go
though,
for 10 minutes, Kevin's like 24 hours.
I did still watch some programs during that 24 hours.
Yeah,
I just turned the phone off.
What kind of programming was it, though? Because, like, if you're watching documentaries or, like, things on nature, like, I feel like that's okay.
I don't quite remember what I watched.
I feel like that's okay to watch.
But what I will say, for just the takeaway from that, when I turned my phone, like, people were like, where did he go?
Right.
Is everything okay?
Right.
Oh, that is true.
Yeah.
Everyone was
freaking out.
Yeah, 24 hours.
Bro,
everyone was freaking out.
Yeah,
So,
and that's like, we're kind of like self-enabling people into bad habits, and you saw that during COVID too.
Absolutely.
You know, where it was like self-enabling into stupid decisions. You know, it's an interesting journey. You know, we've came a long way in technology and advancement in science, but you know, then you just kind of get gluttonous with it. Like, do you really need? You know, Western medicine is great, right? Like, I like ivermectin. I take it regularly now just because I know what it does for the body.
Sure. And Rogan was obviously a big supporter of it.
Yeah, a huge supporter. Okay, great. So Western medicine made ivermectin. But do we really need all these other medicines over here, right? Like, how many times do you really need to see a doctor before you're just redundant in it?
Yeah.
How many doctors do you need to have before you're redundant in it? You know? So there's just, we've all gotten a little gluttonous with the advancement.
Yep.
And now the push for that they want us to go on is to get even more gluttonous and really just buy wholeheartedly into it. And you're seeing some people go, no, I don't think that's the way I'm going to go.
Yep. So I like a linear fashion. I like a full circle, and I like to keep things like, what is the purpose? Obviously, this is a deep conversation. There's a lot of layers of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
It can go on for weeks.
Yeah.
But based upon what we talked about here, what are the big takeaways? So for anyone who's diligent enough and interested enough to hear this whole conversation out, where do we go from here? You know, like, and like you've talked about, you know, homesteading, all these things. I've talked about appreciating now. I guess, Kev, what are your thoughts? Like, where do we go from here, man?
Well, I mean, I think we touched on a lot of it throughout this program, you know, and that's just remain educated. Do what feels right? Make educated decisions about what's going on. Don't take things at face value. You know, it's okay to be question things. And I mean, for me, I can only speak for me personally because everyone's going to analyze it differently, right? Because people are going to listen to this episode and go, well, these guys aren't doctors, not scientists. They don't, politicians, whatever. They don't know shit, right? We're just speaking in general terms, right? And that's kind of how that's why I love podcasting. You know, we're sharing ideas, we're sharing experiences, and how we would analyze those deals. You know, going off your point, Mike, you know, ivermectin is the thing you take. I take beet extract and garlic every day for my heart health.
Nice.
Because I, do have cholesterol and high blood pressure runs the family. I'm not going to go on the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
That's my decision.
Fuck pharmaceuticals. I'm going to go ahead and say that here.
So to answer that, like, those are the decisions I make for myself.
Yeah.
To go forward and surround myself with the people that I want to surround myself with, right? Take control of our life.
Yeah.
And don't subscribe to the nonsense. I mean, that's all I can say. I can't decide what the listener or what Mike Pachan's going to do or what Arthur Rod's going to do.
Right.
That's what I'm going to do.
If anyone wants any suggestions, I mean, again, if you want to start to participate and push back from what I say is coming, and I only say that because they say it's coming, right? So I'm just repeating their words and their documents and their plan of action and their historic set of events. I'm not making stuff up. It'd be like calling a baseball game. It'd be like calling a baseball game and you're calling what's happening on the field, and then people are telling you're a conspiracy theorist because you're saying there's a guy on first and second and the batter's about to come up and the batter has a historic precedent of hitting the ball into the outfield, right? It's rooted in reality. It's historical.
I knew I had to hear Mike Pachan say rooted in reality at least one time.
Rooted in reality,
during this episode.
So if you want to start to participate in pushing back, vote with your dollars, right? Log off anything that you would consider mainstream or corporate media, right? Dig in with independent media. There's some really good resources out there. And then if you want, start to donate money to some of these agencies that are doing really good, right? We donate a couple bucks to like a favorite podcast every month, or an organization that's tracking down the child predator networks that are rampant in the country, and an organization that puts up a ton of money for attorneys and goes through all the Pfizer documents from the jabs in detail, and there's 3,500 volunteers, and they're bringing criminal and civil court cases out. There's a ton. I have media subscriptions that I just listen to the podcast for free, but I pay the subscription so that they have funds to continue to grow their own independent media outlets, right? And you're talking $10 a month, which I know is a lot of money right now, but you can get involved in smaller ways, and that trickle effect has a big output.
Yeah,
right?
and so just to kind of complete this trinity here, because I feel like everybody should actually take every bit of advice and apply it what works best for them.
Yeah.
And kind of my piece of advice on all this, and I've alluded to this multiple times already on this episode, so I'm just going to drive it home, and that is get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. And also be present and understand when the times are good. You need both. You need to appreciate when you know that it's actually good. Like, these are good times. Like, personally, for me, like I'm blessed right now, and I recognize that.
Yin and yang.
Yeah. Yes. Yin and yang.
Yeah, right.
Yin and yang. So
Yeah.
so that's one of my biggest things on this is, take time to appreciate your good and bad times. Get comfortable, get uncomfortable, and when you're getting tested and life is testing you and you feel like you're on the precipice of struggling, you're like, fuck, how can I make this happen? How can I fucking make rent happen? And like you're stressing out about life, fucking overcome that test.
Right.
Overcome the struggle, because once you do, there is this level of mental accomplishment that it doesn't matter if there's a 5 trifecta about to fuck the whole planet, because all of a sudden, in that one moment, that blip of time, you felt accomplished. And every moment that you can feel accomplished up until the fucking end counts. And so that's my piece of advice. And take all 3 of ours, like, and do with it what you want. Like that's how I feel about all that.
And that's the upside about challenging times. Those challenging times create challenges, and for those that will rise to the challenge, we'll get way more of a dopamine rush out of overcoming those challenges than social media or the metaverse or the matrix drugs could ever bring you.
Oh, dude,
right?
so
that's the beauty of the challenges we've already gone through, the challenges we're in today, and the challenges that are absolutely coming down the pipe. Is if you're ready for them, you're gonna do really well, right?
Preparation is key to battle.
Yeah, I mean, look at sports. Sports is all about challenges and overcoming them in a certain amount of time,
Absolutely.
and then you win.
Situational awareness, practice, practicing those scenarios, being prepared for those scenarios.
The dangerous parts about the time is like we saw in COVID. If people don't want to overcome them challenges and they want the easy way out, they're now going to try and drag you down along with them. Kind of like if you've ever, listened to someone who's drowning. When someone's drowning, they're most dangerous because when you go up to save them, they actually struggle and try and take you under. We saw that during COVID. So they see that now and they're seeing, well, if we launch a smart city, people just get drug into it. Don't let yourself get drug into the negative part about these challenges. Have courage, be courageous, learn from how maybe you acted or didn't act or needed to act during COVID, and start to apply them for what's coming, because you're going to have plenty of times to re-challenge yourself. Don't be the person drowning, taking everyone else down with you, because we're not coming to save you this time. You're going to get left out there and your ass is going to drown.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that there's been enough experiences that have taken place now that people need to think for themselves.
Yep.
Make educated decisions.
Right.
No one's coming to save you. You got to save yourself.
No. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I love when the man, Mike Pachan, aw damn, he backs on. I love when you come on the show.
Because you get demonetized every time.
Well, because we really have real conversations.
We'll see.
And you start saying some shit. Like I try my best to pay attention of how I'm communicating while I communicate. And I've been trying to I've been trying to talk over you multiple times, and you keep talking like you try. Like there's something about when Mike Pachan comes on here. Like there's just so much emotion behind all of it. These are all important subjects. They are, and it's always a good episode when you come on, man.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks
always
for
a good
having me.
episode,
It's,
man.
and they always bang.
Yeah.
They always bang every time.
Yeah.
I mean, they might be monetized, but we're at like an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is like 45 minutes past our usual.
Yeah.
But it's been a year and a half since we checked in with you, man.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
love having you
and this
on.
is real
New
shit.
studio looks great.
Thank
Yeah.
you, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And we got to get back up to the land and do some fun. Play some stump. Let's drink some beers.
Yeah. Man,
Let's just
get out there.
Some good old hillbilly fun.
You can take your shoes off and
I'll do earthing.
out.
I'll do earthing, yeah.
Yeah, you can earth out.
Feed the horses next door.
Yeah.
Are the horses still there?
No, the horses haven't came back yet.
Damn
but
it.
There's horses in the neighborhood. We'll go earth around and go.
I'll go
find
earth
them.
with the horses.
Yeah.
I'm in.
I mean, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
I feel like truly, genuinely, that you are a positive pillar within society.
Oh, thanks.
And I mean that, man. Okay, because I know there's a vicious, malicious activity happening out there, and you almost got to be a fucking brutal bulldog to see that shit and be like, not me.
Yeah.
Like, not me. Like, I'm vicious too, but I just care about people more than you do. But, like, don't fuck with me. And I feel like that's what you provide. That's the energy you bring. I love what you do, man. I support you and your family. I know Kev does as well, and it's good, man. It's really good to have these type of conversations, and hopefully somebody out there was listening in and a piece of knowledge. There's like one mental nugget for them.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us for all these years, man. I mean, going back to episode 18 for your first appearance, being transparent with our listeners and viewers,
right.
Being open about, hey, maybe my opinion's different now than it was then,
yeah.
and then different things that, that's great.
Yeah.
It takes courage to do that for sure, and I respect the hell out of you, brother, for doing it.
Well, thanks for having me on. Appreciate everyone listening. And go back through the episode and jump in your search bar and look any of that stuff up. And, if I'm inaccurate, let me know. But, go on your own little search, right? And engage reality and engage objective truth and engage what's going on right now. And there's multiple paths, but, we kind of, see things in, this way. So we're all in a fork on the road. Pick which way you want to go and commit to it. It don't have to be the way I'm going, right? But there's a couple different routes coming up. So pick your route and own it.
Absolutely,
right?
full send, own it.
Yeah.
Go like hell, let a rip, tater chip.
Yeah,
all the things. Believe and achieve.
Yes,
Yeah.
And one thing that we need to do, the three of us, is I just had it. It is finding peace within the chaos. Can we just cheers over that?
Yeah.
I mean,
finding peace in the chaos.
Peace in the chaos.
Let's all find peace within the chaos. Respect to everybody out there. Thanks for tuning in. And I know you're going there, Kev.
Be good to yourselves.
You deserve it.